Hi everyone, this is Phil Liu with PNSQC, and with the extension of the abstracts deadline from April 21st to May 1st, what we've decided to do is to have a webinar with an expert panel to hopefully generate some ideas for abstracts for this upcoming conference. Like I said, my name is Phil Liu, and I'm the CEO of XPOsoft. And I'm also on the program committee. We also have with us today Bill Baker, who's from the PNSQC Board of Directors. And we're hoping that with our lead group of panelists, who are all experts in their field, we're going to be able to get a great, I guess you could say, stirring up of ideas that attendees can listen to and hopefully help them to think of ideas in their own workplace of things that they've been able to solve in the software quality domain. Just a short word about PNSQC. We're the oldest software quality conference in North America, and we're having our 33rd year. It's a totally nonprofit organization run by volunteers. And the papers and talks that we usually get are from people really describing their own experiences at work and how they've solved problems hands-on with tools or processes or methods or things like that. And we get quite a wide range of topics, everything from performance testing to management issues. We're hoping that not only people want to submit an abstract just for the sake of sharing their own knowledge, but there's also quite a few other benefits, including admission free as an author, as well as being able to attend workshops and get some other professional development benefits as well. For today's webinar, we have 5 experts that we've invited to talk about some things in their respective expertise. And hopefully with these guys, we'll be able to catalyze some great ideas for this coming conference. So I think what we're going to do now is just turn it over to each of the panelists and let them talk a little bit about some of their own experiences of what they think is hot in this field of software quality or problems that they've been working on with clients, and possibly think of ways that we can contribute to the community. So first up, we'll leave it up to Jon Hagar, who is author of the recently released book, Software Tested Attacks to Break Mobile and Embedded Devices. And you can see his contact information there if you have any questions. Jon, I'll just turn it over to you.
Okay, so can you hear me okay, Phil?
Yeah, I think we can hear you.
Okay, great. So big area of interest for me these days is mobile smartphone kinds of things and mobile devices in general. And so I've been going to a lot of conferences, hearing people talking about those things. And I kind of see things falling into kind of 2 broad groups. A lot of people come in and talk about mobile and smart devices, saying, here's how we're testing. I mean, it's kind of the same stuff that we've seen for years, which is such things as exploratory testing, classic software test techniques, scenario and story-based testing. And those are all good and interesting, and I always enjoy hearing those. But I'm also hearing from people that a lot of people in the mobile space have very limited time, very short development schedules, and not a lot of money. A lot of these are startup types of things. A few I've run into go, well, why do we even need to test? I hope this crowd doesn't need those kind of answers, but there's certainly time and money pressures that testers have to work within. So that usually leaves me kind of wondering, what could people that are already solving some of these problems provide in that domain? Things I might specifically talk about. Does anybody have any interesting tours, which is a concept James Whitaker and others have been talking about these days, specific to the mobile space. The work I did was on attacks, again, kind of like James Whitaker's work. I'd be interested in other attacks that people have come up with, attacks being patterns that a tester uses to find errors in the software. For another area that I might ask people to think about, I'll say providing a little bit of information on, are what kinds of errors, bugs are we seeing in mobile devices and apps? The work I did showed there are some differences from, I'll say, the classic IT kind of world. I'm very interested in hearing people's experience and stories with what are known as bug patterns or error taxonomies. And certainly there's things been talked about and published. We hear about the mobility of the device being a factor, the environment, the proliferation of the number of devices that are out there, and operating systems. You can find papers on the web on that. I see them at conferences. Those things are interesting, but I extend into things like that are different from, say, classic IT, where we really have some unique hardware. Now, if you think of the classic phone, it's got accelerometers, it's got batteries, it's got a network connection that may come and go. I like to hear stories on those kinds of things and how, yeah, the development has to be a little bit different, but then how do we test for that? So I'd like to hear stories on those kinds of things. I personally have found a few cases where the people coming in to develop the software and test the software, they were experienced, but they were experienced, say, in the IT domain. And that transition from the IT domain to the mobile domain, I'd be interested in hearing other people's experience on how that, I'll call it transition, happened and what they would have done differently if they'd known after a year of testing a mobile device before they started testing the mobile device. So those are the kinds of things I'd like to hear. Certainly in the mobile space, the smartphone space, the speed of change is rather phenomenal. The things that I wrote about a year ago seem like they're almost passé by now in some cases. Also, how do you stay competitive and get a good device out there and a good app out there when there's 2 million apps? The number of apps are just huge. It's a little different than the IT world in terms of competition, and you've got the user experience with people writing up things in the stores on reviews. Those are all things that make this environment different. I'd like to hear from testers how they're addressing those things. So those are the issues and things I'd like to hear more about. The classic test techniques, that'd be fine too, but you know, those things that I talked about there, the last are the ones I'd really like to hear people talk about.
Okay,
That's
great.
all I got, Phil.
Yeah, great, John. Thanks very much. So sounds like there's quite a few new areas and challenges in the mobile software space, including, you know, different defect taxonomies as well as issues related to the actual device in testing the software. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. We'll go on next to the next panelist, which is Matt. Matt, I've worked with Matt before, and Matt has a great breadth and depth in a lot of different areas. But lately, he's been working in Scrum implementation. So, Matt, maybe you can share with us some of that stuff you've been doing. You can see the audience can see your info here in case you want to reach Matt. But Matt, take it away. Matt.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
I'm here. So thanks, Phil. Yeah, if you were to pick one agile method that really got the most brain share in the past several years and is the most widely adopted throughout at least North America, if not worldwide, it's going to be Scrum, right? There's 400,000 certified Scrum Masters or something like that. And when you look at the Scrum method, both in my consulting and just going to Nashville last year to the Agile conference and talking to people, it's more common that people say we're doing Scrum, but than to say they're actually doing Scrum. And it's almost predictable, right? You say we're gonna do the software within this 2-week time box, whatever the time box is, a sprint, and then on day 9, all the stories drop into the laps of test, and we say, why is test the bottleneck? This is taking too long. And then it's common to say, well, regression testing takes too long, and we'll do that after we do development. So development is on sprint 27, and test is on sprint 26, and operations is trying to get the patch of sprint 25 up on production, and EA is on sprint 28, and PM is on sprint 29, and suddenly we've got this huge amount of work in progress inventory. It looks kind of like a waterfall project, only people are all working on different branches, and developers are getting multi-tasks to fix the patch versus fix the bugs versus do development versus come to the planning meeting versus, and throughput falls through the floor. And this is not an isolated problem. When I talk to companies, I can ask a series of questions, and they're doing Scrum usually within 5 or 10 minutes. I can make some of these predictions, and the jaw drops, and they say, how did you know? It's predictable. Right? This is going to happen. So for purposes of PNSQC, I think we can do some things to really improve that. I think that impacts the quality of the software that we're delivering. It impacts the end user experience. It impacts our life in the job, and it inputs throughput, which impacts how much money the company can make on us, right? So if you've got a failure story, it's probably not a complete failure. There's probably nuggets of insight that you took in there. If you lived through that and you can help someone else prevent it, and you've come out the other side, or even you see the light at the end of the tunnel, even if you've got 4, 5, 6 quick tips that made your life easier to go through this, or cautionary tales, or warnings, or of course, better yet, if you sort of come out the other side and you've come up with an implementation that reduces some of these things, like reducing work in progress, forcing people to stay. Forcing is a strong word, but focusing on actually delivering working shippable increments at the end of every sprint. Well, how did you do that? How did you get past this siren's call of we'll just do release testing next iteration for last sprint? All of that. I think there are a lot of companies struggling with that. So first of all, if you're struggling with that, I don't think you're alone. And second of all, if you're struggling with that, there's answers out there. So even just starting with a search of the literature, and if you've reinvented your own, go to PNSQC and tell people about it. I think people would really be excited to hear what you have to say, especially for how to compress release testing, which I think is really hurting a lot of companies right now. The reason they go to that, we'll do release testing next sprint on last sprints, because they can't do it in 2 weeks, or it's very close to 2 weeks. So you can't get any development done if you're spending the whole time testing. So ideas to compress the pace of release testing, I think, are especially valuable right now. And hopefully that's somewhere in there you found an idea or two.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good, Matt. That's a great idea. I think most companies are struggling with that, is where they fit in their testing. So they just end up not doing it, or using a waterfall method rather than actually doing real Scrum. So that's great. Thanks a lot, Matt. Let's see, we'll go on here. The next one is Wilson. Wilson, you're on. Wilson works for HP as one of their gurus. And Wilson, you wanted to talk about asynchronous testing today?
Yeah, it's lately I've been working on what I see is really a massive paradigm shift of mindset, necessary among testers. My concern revolves around verification of these asynchronous systems, like we see on chat rooms and stock tickers, sports scores, and what we call real-time monitoring systems. And when I registered a new iPad the other day, I authorized several push communications, right? Have you guys got into that? So that's when servers send me phone text messages really at random times on their timing rather than mine. And this really is a massive change from users like me who initiate every communication with servers. And the HTML4, the previous version of HTML, assumed in its design that users, humans, would initiate communications every time, and that's no longer true. So with HTML5, what we call WebSockets enables these two-way communications. And Apple and Google each define their own protocols. And the problem is that we're expecting equity when we get information, And I overheard a teenager complain that she got a text just a few seconds after her friend did, and that put her at a major disadvantage. Oh my goodness, right? And this is just not fair, she says. But I think she's got a point because I'm seeing a lot of these massive online games that come up, and if we're too slow, we only get a couple seconds. We get killed by others, and if we're stock traders, we get killed financially, right? So I think these instant alerting systems is really where I think a lot of these applications are going to go. This allows us to live in a world, racing towards what some label technical singularity, where everything changes, more and more quickly over time. And so performance will be more important with asynchronous systems. But the key I want to talk about in the session that I hope to present is that response time metrics are completely different with asynchronous systems. We need to measure transactions starting on the servers and not on client systems. So that means that transactions we measure now span several machines and not just on individual client machines. And so a lot of the scripting of performance that we've been doing is client centric. And I think in the future we need to be both server and client, so that way we can see the hops and the jumps between servers and different servers, and as well as clients. So it's a very complicated kind of concept. So in my session, I hope to show how async systems can be tested today, using LoadRunner and other tools. And I hope other speakers will also address this paradigm, because it's really a major change in the way that we look at performance and why we test performance.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways.
So Wilson, do you think there are any other bigger issues that around this that people would find interesting in terms of subjects they could submit for abstracts?
Oh yeah, I mean it's just, but to me this is the biggest issue, because it's the biggest change that I've seen in years, and because it's the fundamental difference. But I think that it really is the technical equivalent of agile, in the sense that things change more and more quickly each day, and how do we cope with it? And having these alerting systems is really a big part of that, and being able to work with it. Like for example, in our functional testing, we don't want to just have testers, give them a list that they'll work off, after, over 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I see in the future, a tester can be interrupted at any time and say, oh, this defect just came in at high priority, go start work on that. And he may only work on it for 5 minutes before something else happens. But, and then the servers then would be the smarts to determine what every tester is going to work at every moment of the day. So I think that's really the new paradigm 10 years from now, where we're going to be told by servers, what to test and when, rather than, giving a list at the beginning of a sprint.
Right. You mentioned in terms of the asynchronicity of these alerts affecting, basically win or lose, getting killed or not in games, and also in the stock market, being milliseconds slower getting that alert from another compared to another guy could mean millions of dollars. Is there any other types of industries where this would really have a big... Oh, is that your dog?
And my pet says, yes, bacon.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's really a crucial aspects. And there are what are some of the other ones you're thinking of?
I was just thinking maybe in the medical community. I'm not sure if there would be applications like that there where the timing is really, really sensitive. I'm not sure. I'm just wondering. I'm just thinking out loud, basically, if there's other industries where this is really important.
Yeah, and let me give you another example here. Is that I own some livestock, and I had put in a monitor for temperature, and it would alert me. And I got one of these Adrenos, and it would alert me on my cell phone depending on the temperature to make sure that everything's okay. But as it turns out, it's not just about the temperature. I also needed to add in the equation of when alerts occur of the predicted temperature and whether there is sun going on. And so, it's really a multi-sensor world that we need to have in order to be, effective. Because, like, for example, this donkey over here, we don't want to, in the springtime, we don't want to let him out in the sun because there's too much sugar in the grass. So that's why we need to have, weather predictions, so that way, we can kind of limit what these various animals do, depending on temperature and the humidity and so forth that are necessary. And the same thing occurs in stock markets and so forth. There's a lot of different factors, and as individual humans, we're really not able to assimilate all of that, and we need to have these servers to work with us, and giving us advice, correlating all these different factors. So I think the whole world of performance testing is in a nascent field, and I think that we're going to be a big contributor to systems of the future, because performance is so critical to the effectiveness and profitability of these systems.
Wow. Okay.
If I could contribute, one other example I've seen recently, I was talking with somebody who worked for a solar power inverter company, and they were getting efficiency data from the various inverters deployed all around the world to a central location, where they were publishing that data back to their users as an online service for people to assess how well that their solar panels were performing. And they were getting something like 100 million signals an hour of measurement efficiency, and they were trying to process all of that data and hopefully not have it arrive all at once. But that's another example of the Internet of Things, connected machines kind of world, I think Wilson's referring to, where these different systems are going to be communicating with each other all the time.
Yeah, and also too, by the way, we with Hadoop and these big data systems, we've already seen a major transformation in performance issues. So, instead of using SQL, for example, Oracle, where we send in to the server a request and it comes back with a index, and it comes back with a foreign key and all of this. With these new systems that we have, that's no longer the case. Essentially the keys are defined in the clients. That generates a GUID, and it dumps all this traffic onto the server, and the server just keeps putting in the logs and uses reduce jobs at the end of the day or whenever it is to do the indexing. So it's a completely different paradigm that is enabled in a lot of these massive systems like Facebook and so forth, where you've got a lot of data coming in all at the same time. And yesterday's systems are not able to handle that kind of influx. And we're seeing similar kinds of situations in the future where major architecture differences are going to come out.
Wow. I mean, that sounds pretty exciting, and a lot of issues coming out of this big data revolution are related to performance. So thanks a lot, Wilson. We'll go on to and we look forward to receiving your abstract, by the way. That's really cool.
Yeah, looking forward again. So yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Eric was the one that was commenting on what you had said, and this is a good intro to Eric. Met Eric at STP last week, and Eric is an expert in many things, but I've asked him to kind of contribute in a more general sense. So Eric, I'll let you take it away.
Yes, it's good to talk with you. I do work primarily in performance these days, but if Mark Tomlinson and Wilson Marr are on the line, then I'm going to have to defer to them. So, some of the test management issues that I've been thinking about a lot lately are how to report on issues, how to make sure they get the proper attention, and how to radiate information constantly. So, some of our work is very technical and is very much associated with getting key data at the right point and measuring the things that we're looking for. But so much of our success comes down to how well do we do at engaging with stakeholders and management and customers and communicating what we're finding as we're testing. The idea that testing is the primary function of testing is to provide information about a project. That's great, but what do you do with that information in terms of making it accessible to people when they want to pull it, and in terms of pushing it to people when you need to report on your progress? Even the example that Matt gave about how Scrum is a struggle in many places is a great example of how, if testers aren't able to get their story told by them, it will be told for them, in terms of, hey, we sent this out and it came back this way, and I don't know what those testers are doing. So I think that there is a lot of good thinking I've seen lately at both at STPCon and other conferences about making information accessible to people and being able to tell the story really well. A lot of that is about, can I tell a story in 30 seconds? Can I tell you the 3 most important things that you need to know? Can I tell you what you need to know in 2 paragraphs? I mean, there's an old saying about in writing about, I worked on it hard enough to say it with fewer words. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a big opportunity for people to refine how they communicate information, both to get action on it and to make sure that they're able to be the person who's describing the work that they're doing.
So, with all this new stuff, I mean, condensing it into something that means something in very short terms is not going to be an easy task.
Yes, that takes time to come up with the 3 sentences that really matter and that really say what you want to say and encapsulate the data that you have. Mm-hmm. It's very important to provide information in a way other than logging stuff to a bug tracking system or where a post-it is on a board.
Right.
As you form the narrative around a project and you help people make decisions, you have a big role in how you talk about things.
Right. So maybe a good abstract topic would be how someone in their work was able to take data and information and condense it and turn it into something that their managers or their executives could actually do something with.
Yes, I think that's a great example. Another great example would be if somebody managed to create an information radiator, that is something that just provides information to anybody who comes and wants to look at it. What's been successful? Mm-hmm. What sources of information do people return to or see as useful when they're consuming results from a test group?
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thanks very much, Eric. I think we have one last guy, and he's up. His name is Mark Tomlinson. Mark is the host of Perf Bytes and is one of the performance testing experts that's high on the list in terms of accumulated and deep expertise. So I'll let Mark take it away.
We can't legally call it expertise, can we? We're not legally experts, are we?
Yeah, I don't know about that, Mark.
I don't know. Maybe in Daniel Pink's 10,000 hour casual assessment, I think we could call ourselves quote unquote experts. But I like to legally eschew, calling it. It's just like we don't say best practices anymore. They're good practices.
Yeah. Well, I'm consciously uncoupled from those technical terms.
Wasn't that the most awesome phrase? I love that. Hi everybody. So Phil, first of all, thanks for asking all of us to kind of chime in on what are these hot topics, and particularly in the performance space, you've got several of us on this call. And I've been giving a lot of presentations recently, just in the last few months. It's like the spring season. It's the blooming of conferences and stuff. So I've given a lot of great presentations that kind of run the gamut. And so the first thing off the top, to anyone that's interested in giving a talk or submitting a session around performance, what I am finding is that there's a lot of people in the middle ground who know that old phrase, just enough to be dangerous. Mm-hmm. Just enough to provide some value around performance. So they've got maybe good scripting skills, but there's a lot of middle of the ground kind of sessions that you could give that wouldn't be very interesting, actually. if you want to give a great session on performance, a really valuable session, you kind of have to move to either end of the spectrum. And so I see that as either pulling people the next step to become more advanced. I did this analysis, performance analysis workshop, and it way better feedback and review, and people really liked it more than other workshops I've done. And so that was one area where, and we did a performance puzzles. Eric was with it. Actually, yeah, Eric, you were with the performance puzzles. Just, and to bring infuriatingly fun performance puzzles, but it was attracting an advanced audience or people that were in the middle ground of skill and talent and understanding testing and performance, but wanting to kind of go that next step. So that's one thing that could make a really great, let's say you've got great load testing skills or stress testing skills, but you don't really know mobile performance, or you haven't gone into how do I do testing in production, and not like a sales pitch on those ideas, which we have heard as these are blooming new kinds of technologies. Really, tell me what skills, how do I measure differently? How do I construct and design my test? What questions am I asking differently than an on-premise app, a back office app, a database, a hardware component? Really get more advanced in that way. Conversely, I think there's still a lot of newcomers to performance. So go the other side of the spectrum if you want to do something valuable, something that appeals to new managers in a performance testing landscape. I have an intro to performance session I do. I get people from managers and product managers, classic QA analysts, folks that have done functional testing or more integration system testing or user acceptance testing, and now they're getting involved with more performance. So go to the other side of the spectrum. So my first tip is just kind of avoid the middle, that sort of run-of-the-mill basic skills, how to do another environment, and try to reach to either end, and you'll find that that's more appealing. The two other things that I'll give as tips, one is this idea that in the performance space, due to agile and continuous delivery, the continuousness is a word, isn't it, Phil?
I think it is, Mark.
It is. It is now.
You're the English major, not me.
Oh, that's right. Okay, sorry. So the continuousness. I've seen a lot of. So Brad Johnson from SOSTA he has an intro kind of level how to do continuous performance testing, how to get started with Jenkins. But again, is anyone taking an advanced step in how to really get going and do well with that? What changes in measurements and metrics? How do I get trending right? If that's all about trending, I'm thinking in the back of my head, I need to build a module for the analysis workshop that just really goes into how to calculate and graphically display trending properly, how to communicate that. So the continuous part, which I think to Eric's point, from Agile is still fairly new in the performance world. Performance functional testing may be paired up very well in, say, TDD, paired TDD. But performance was never really part of that Agile, where it's really making its inroads because of other technologies like surface visualization or stubbing and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So performance in Agile or early performance testing is still, that one's also appealing as well. So those are, but again, it's not for newcomers, although you have devs in the class that want to learn, hey, my boss tells me I'm going to test my components for 10 threads. What should I measure? How do I run load? How long should I run the load? So that's why I'm saying you either got people who are in the middle and really want to get advanced, or you've got new developers in Agile or new continuous practices or even new QA teams that are taking on performance, and that's at the other end of the spectrum. But those are the kinds of sessions that I'm finding really popular, valuable, good reviews, and it also sort of, it either moves performance into the center of the conversation for newcomers, or it helps people get to the next level in their practices.
Right. So for instance, a very introductory type talk. For instance, how I started doing performance testing and got started using Load Runner or something like that from the one side of the spectrum. And then is that what you mean? Something like that, Mark?
It could be very technical, a newcomer, how to do a certain type of scripting. It could be very technical, but it's really, first steps in performance
Right.
planning. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
a performance planning. What's an objective,
Mm-hmm.
or an intro to mobile performance load testing, or intro
Mm-hmm.
to cloud-based load testing could be an
Mm-hmm.
interesting subject as well.
Okay.
Wow,
And
I mean, cloud testing, I got the vendor pitch on that,
right.
but I'd really like to talk to somebody who's going to get me 3-4 steps down the road to really doing this, more
Right.
than just kind of a couple of bullets on the slide.
Right. And then on the
Yeah.
other side of the spectrum would be something very specialized or deep, something like continuous performance testing with agile or something like that, right?
Oddly, I think the continuous and agile is mostly, it would appeal to newcomers. So you wouldn't want to like throw at them the puzzlers
Mm-hmm.
and stuff that we do.
Right.
An advanced thing gets into more analysis. It gets
Mm-hmm.
into, like you say, maybe more technically specific mobile performance, as you
Mm-hmm.
and I've talked about it, Phil. I
Right.
mean, you could start peeling away the layers of onion and get into, all right, really, what makes a mobile device perform well? What doesn't? What's code optimizations am I going to measure?
Right.
Getting into how do I measure performance in the cloud, and really get into what the metrics mean, how to make
Mm-hmm.
sense of them, how to display them, what bottlenecks to look for in S3 versus something in Azure or something
Right.
like that. So yeah,
Okay.
the advanced stuff could be more specific to a platform, or
Right.
it could be a technique, so that's more mathematic or more challenging conceptually.
Right. Well, thanks a lot, Mark. I think you
Okay.
spawned some great ideas for folks here. So one thing I forgot to say was that people should feel free to ask questions. We've got the question bar in the GoToWebinar control panel, so feel free to ask questions. Mark
We
is
love
our
questions.
last panelist, but I'm hoping that the panelists will hang on, and if you want to put it in mute mode, that's cool. In case people want to ask questions, then I'll relay them on to you. Right now, we're going to step forward with Bill Baker, who's on the board of PNSQC, and Bill is going to be talking about the process of submitting an abstract. So, Bill, I'll let you get going.
Okay. Yeah. Um, I'd like to thank you, Phil, for setting this up, and all the panelists for their contributions and great ideas. As you can see, PNSQC covers a large range of topics, and we're looking for paper ideas in any of these. So it's not just testing or not just automation, but a lot of other things. Personally, I came to the conference to learn about process improvement. And in fact, a number of years ago, I came to a conference and took away some information and got all excited and wound up leading process improvement project at the company I worked for in requirements management, and then came back a year after that had been completed and presented a paper on my experience. Next slide. The PNSQC audience really is focused on practitioners, and they are very much interested in case studies and user experiences, and getting ideas that they can take back and put into effect immediately on returning to their organizations. So what we're looking for is people to submit abstracts at this point. If you go to our website, we have a short paper on how to write an abstract. I've outlined some of the portions here that make up a good abstract. So tell us why you're motivated. Why do you care about the issue that you're presenting? What is the problem you're trying to solve, and how did you solve that? And then, how well did your solution work? And then the implications, and this is important, of how your solution can be applied elsewhere. You know, give the audience some takeaways that they can use in their own organization. So submitting is, next slide, is fairly easy. We have an online system where you go to submit. Supposedly you have a few paragraphs that you put together telling us what your problem is and how you solved it. You go to this site, create an account. One thing that always confuses people is this particular system wants you to set up conflict domains. And what those are is essentially URLs of the companies you've worked for that might be a conflict of interest. So we don't want people from the same companies reviewing your abstract, is what it amounts to. Once you've set up your account, you just go through the submission form, cut and paste your abstract into the form, or you can also upload it as a document and you're done. There's a couple links there. The call for abstracts will list out all the potential topics we're looking for. The other one is the author resources page that has that link to how to write an abstract and some other information that authors might find useful. The process is we're accepting abstracts through May 1st. Then we have a selection committee review those and rate those, and the program committee takes those ratings and decides what we're going to accept for the 2014 conference.
Bill, we do have a couple questions, Bill, that are kind of related to you. One person asks, how to decide whether or not you have something worth speaking about and you're the one to do it? That's kind of an interesting question. I'll let you handle that.
Well, I'd encourage that person to if they think they've got something that is useful, to go ahead and submit it. The selection committee represents a wide range of interests, and if they've done a fairly good job of describing their ideas, they could get some useful feedback from that committee as to how widely applicable it is. And assuming it is widely applicable and there's a lot of interest, then they would get their paper accepted for this year. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And the next question is, when submitting an abstract for a poster paper, is it expected that you will submit a draft of the poster by the abstract deadline?
Poster papers are a fairly informal thing. If you want some review, we can provide that, but pretty much we accept anything that's submitted. And you're free to present your poster any way you want. So I think I've seen posters anywhere from somebody writing on a whiteboard to one person actually took a Prezi presentation and turned it into a paper document for a poster. We had a poster last year of a very complex system that was used by the Veterans Administration group here in Portland to put together, to try and communicate to the developers all the requirements and interactions in a pharmaceutical monitoring system that they were wanting to build. So posters, pretty much anything goes, and no, they're not required to present something to us beforehand, but I think we can get it reviewed if they do.
Okay. That's the end of the questions so far, Bill. I'll let you finish up here.
Okay, as I said, our abstract closing is through the May 1st of this year. Really, an abstract is just a few paragraphs, so you should be doing some thinking about what you want to communicate, but it shouldn't take that long to put together something. You know, case studies, what your experience was with a certain problem or issue that you had, pretty much anything that, you know, you're excited about and want to communicate to other people. We do encourage the people that do the technical paper presentations to also do poster papers. The poster paper sessions are nice because instead of having a big audience, you get to talk to people one-on-one or in small groups. So it's another way to network and get feedback on your ideas.
Yeah, I'd like
And
to.
that's about it.
Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize a few things that in terms of the second bullet point there, which is professional level technical paper. After the author submits an abstract, which, like you said, is only a couple paragraphs, they do get assistance in submitting drafts, and we have reviewers that work with them and give them feedback on pretty much as many drafts as they want as they have time for, to really take the paper, you know, to a, like it says here, professional level. And it's a really unique opportunity to have that kind of help. Um, the third bullet point there is the opportunity to gain important public speaking skills. You know, the conference is really, like we said earlier, run by volunteers, and you know, we don't really have any professional speakers. You know, so nobody's really you know, a super duper public speaker, and you know, we hope that, you know, standing in front of someone and a group of people does not defer people from submitting an abstract. It's really just basically talking about your ideas to your colleagues.
And I have to say that as somebody who's attended a number of conferences, you won't find very polished speakers for the most part. I wouldn't be too nervous that your presentation skills will somehow blunt your ideas so that people won't take them in. You'll have an interested audience if you're talking about your experience.
Right, and you know the other thing.
I'll second that.
And Phil, this is Bill again. I thank you for reminding me that yes, the reviewers will help you get started. I've been a reviewer in the past, and I can remember in one case, the first draft was little more than an outline for the paper, and I spent a fair amount of time with that author to help him work his ideas into a paper that was presented. So we pride ourselves in taking people who don't have a whole lot of experience and helping them turn out a polished product that they're proud to have published and present to their peers.
Right, and you know, as in one of the other conferences that I recently attended, we also had a session that was actually run by Mark, that you know, coached people in doing some public speaking. So we may have a session like that as well. I think that's a really good idea to help people at least know that they have support and that they're not alone in tackling this kind of thing. So let's see if we can I think that's it. I think that's the end of the webinar. I want to say thanks to the panelists. I really appreciate you guys jumping in and helping out at such short notice. And the webinar will be on YouTube. We have recorded it, so if any of the attendees want to listen again and pick out any nuggets that you might be able to use for an idea for a paper, that would be great. Thanks very much, everyone, and we'll see you at the conference in October. Bye-bye.
Cool. Thank you, Phil.